Well, welcome back to this beautiful conversation, up close and personal with the ex-president. At this point, we stood up in the garden and had a little stroll and we're talking. I just wanted to find out what his childhood memories were, if he had a dingy, poor, my daddy can't pay my school fees childhood memory, or a nice, rosy one.
More than privileged.
Oh, that's good.
I'm one of originally 10 siblings.
10? A big family.
All of them, perhaps were born with silver or even better metal spoons in their mouth in Kumasi.
Okay.
And I happen to be the seventh child, and everything was laid on or up for me from as far as I could remember. Starting school at Kumasi Government Boys School, then the most elitist schools
you can get to.
could get to then. And then on to a boarding school. I think I must have been about 11 or so. Methodist boarding school, just 10 miles out of Kumasi. And then from there to Prempeh College. And then from there, straight from school to Britain, to Lincoln's Inn, to read for the bar, and being called to the bar at the age of 22.
It doesn't get better than that.
Then to Oxford University for the next 3 years, and then employment in the city of London, where the financial capital perhaps of the world. And then from there, just a short spell back to Ghana to practice at Okomfo Chambers with Victor Osu for 2 years, and then on to Kumasi City Council, mayor or town clerk, and then straight to Parliament, 69, deputy foreign minister at that age, you know.
But Ghanaians have got this habit of celebrating dingy stories and making people feel as if they need to apologize because they have a silver spoon. What do you think about it?
If you were born to with a good fortune and you didn't allow that to get into you to the point where you lose your humanity or sense of humanity, why should you apologize for that? Who wouldn't have thanked God for being born? Say by Bill Gates. To me, any apologies would be hypocritical.
As a people, we are developing that culture.
Unfortunately, because we haven't been thinking through our values of development well. So we tend to glorify people who perhaps had difficult beginnings. There could be people who didn't have it too good from beginning, but who overcame their challenges, became good people, and with all the qualifications and achievements they made, they still remain human, and they were able to share. I don't have anything against that. But where you didn't have it too good, you struggled a bit, you've managed to pull through, and you want everybody to see you as so special. I don't buy that.
Moving on to sports, wanted to find out if indeed the president was a sports person. And if it's sports, is it just football or just other sports?
I've always been a sports person.
Mainly football or other sports?
Football, volley, table tennis, cricket. The schools I attended, even my primary school, Kumasi Government School, had 3 football pitches, a volley pitch, cricket. At that early age, we were exposed to all these things.
Did you play?
I wasn't like a star player, but we did sports. It was a must.
Okay.
So by the time I was into boarding school, of course, athletics, we did all that. To Prempeh, football, cricket, everything, and then I became the desk champion.
Okay.
I went to intercolleges twice. I was at the Buakwa State in those days.
Okay.
Achebi, for representing my school as the discus champion. And then to Achimota. And then Cadet Corps came in, where, like, you know, we forest people, we are not too used to water, swimming. But through the Cadet Corps, I got introduced to swimming at the Kumasi military barracks in those days. So
there's a bit of swimming in there as well?
But not too well, not too well. Even now, when you get me, I walk the fringes.
Now, I am here to talk to a woman achiever. Now, that gives me great excitement because, as you know, number one, women won't talk to me that very often, even though they disagree with me, but they don't. And number two, for a woman to be recognized, it means she has done so much more. And this is one woman who has definitely done it. First ever woman Director General of Ghana Education Service, the very Reverend Amma Afi. And we're here to hear his story. Indeed, he grew up from a very privileged background with a very famous dad, the famous Aris Blay in the UGCC era. What was her upbringing like? What are her principles? What are some of the things that inspired her to govern the education system? Stay tuned. It's going to be a good one. Hello and welcome back. And as I told you, I get extremely excited when my personality is a woman for two reasons. And you women are going to kill me, but I have to say, number one, you don't like coming on my show. You always give me excuses and don't come. And number two, you see, for a woman to be accepted or recognized for doing 3, it means she must have done about 13 before they give her a mark for 3. So anytime there's a woman achiever, whatever we say, multiply by 10 or 20 as you're viewing it, and that's how much she did for her to be recognized across societies. So I will say well done, and thank you very much, Reverend, for accepting us into your home to talk to us.
Welcome.
Well, I'm sure you know.
Fortunately, I have a very bad cold, so you have to pardon me. Okay?
We will. Reverend Amma Afi, and I'm sure.
Very reverend.
Well, let me add very reverend. She's a woman.
No.
If she was a man, they would have given it to her, probably even 3 reverends. And she's a woman, and I'm sure by the end of the conversation, you would know how much she had to push to attain what she did, and it's an inspiration for all women, especially up-and-coming girls watching this interview. So, very Reverend Asofo, I call you Asofo. Asofo is nice, yeah. Asofo, I want to go all the way back to childhood. You know, it must be that about, because I mean, growing up with, you know, Aris Blay, it's not it's not a run-of-the-mill family. That must be a really good upbringing, and no apologies for that.
I'm glad you say that, because for a long time I've had to sort of apologize even for my background.
Wow, no.
Yes, because especially when I rose to become a Director General, people will want to interview me, and I tell them, you don't want to hear my story, because
it's a good one.
Yeah, I've never had to sell or do anything. You know, they want to hear those stories, how you've got to struggle to get to where you are. But as you said, thanks be to God, I was born into a home that my parents knew what education was all about. My father was always already a lawyer. He became a lawyer in 1924, when I had not even been thought about.
Wow.
My mother was educated. I mean, those days, for a woman, for a woman to finish stand 7, I mean, it's like she's finished university. So I had educated parents who understood what education was about and knew that, you know, I had to be educated. And I never really had to struggle for my fees to be paid and all that, you know. I didn't think I had anything extraordinary, personally. But it's society that makes you feel that way. Because number one, we never walked barefooted, and my mother will not have it. You know, even when we went to a boarding school, she will go and have the rules changed because she wouldn't have a child walking barefooted. You know, I mean, that's a sort of thing. And we got away, my siblings and I, we got away with a lot of changes because by the grace of God, we were also clever. You know, it's when you are not doing well in class, the teachers will pick on you and that sort of thing. But then after all the privileges, let me put in quotes, that we had, we go to school and we perform. You see, what people didn't know was that even I started class 1 in 1949. Okay. Way back that time, we had private teachers who came home to teach us. So private tuition for children to me is not strange. So we go to school, we do well, and people don't understand. We had a scheduled life.
Did you stand out amongst your peers? Because most of the stories is, you know, I had to walk to school, my mother wasn't educated. Mostly you get the father being educated, but the mother is not. And, you know, there's always that struggle story. So amongst your peers, I mean, coming to school with your white socks and your shoes, didn't they think, wow, look at them?
They thought so. That's what I said. I didn't feel it was anything strange. But the society that makes you feel that way. Initially, we would even, you know, we had 2 sessions, up morning and the afternoon. In the afternoon, if we were going to school and my father's car was not available, we had on hats to protect us from the sun.
Which area did you grow up?
I grew up in Sekendi. I was born in Sekendi. I grew up in Sekendi. I went to Sekendi Methodist School.
I just want to find out what they know. I want to know Oregon.
And
because if it was in Accra, to see how many,
yeah, something like that, you know. And people knew my parents, and my mother was very strict. You see, what people thought was that we were being spoiled.
Okay.
And especially those days, they said that children of lawyers turn out no good. But you can't put it past my mother. I mean, my mother was very strong, a disciplinarian, and trained us for the future. We were not trained to be snobbish. We were trained to appreciate what God has given us and appreciate others. If somebody hasn't got it, it's not the person's fault. Sure. You know, so you consider yours as a privilege. So we had respect for human beings. And we grew up like any normal child. We did house chores. Though we had people in the house to do things for us, we did house chores as well. And then Saturdays, when we are big enough, were set aside for us to go to the market to learn how to do marketing.
Wow. And
then we'll come home and cook our meal for ourselves.
So aside all the privileges, Mom made sure that, you know...
Oh, yes. Yes. And when we, at times it got a bit into our heads, like my father never beat anybody, I mean, disciplined you with a cane or anything like that. He always talked to you and will let you appreciate the fact that he didn't have it that way. That's why he's making it available for us, and that we should be grateful for little misses. And that we should take our lessons seriously, steady. He says, I will not leave you a mansion of money, you know, or anything, but I'll give you education. And if you use it well, that will be worth more than any riches that I can leave for you. So that's how we grew up. And my mom was so strict also that when we went to school and anything that would lead us into trouble, you avoided it. You know, because when the report went home, oh yes, when the report went home, you will really have it. So we avoided that. But I keep saying that anybody bringing up children must give the child the value of knowing that there is a God somewhere that you are accountable to. I mean, our church services, my mother never played with it. At a very young age, we're reading in church. We'll take part in anything that is done in the Church for Children's service. We'll lead services during Children's Sundays. And, so to me, it's... God has always been present in our lives.
You said something, let me pick you on that. As in, if you got in trouble at school, you'd rather it was dealt in school rather than bring it home. Just fast forward to today's days where the child tells the teacher, I'm going to bring my father. Have we lost that?
Oh, yes. We really have lost that. Teachers had power that in our time to discipline a child. In fact, not only teachers, a neighbor would also have the power to check a child who is going wayward. It was a community affair. But these days, I just don't really know what is happening. But, my mother will not stand for any abuse. Okay. There's a distinction between discipline and abuse of a child.
Sure.
I remember one of our cousins was beaten up mercilessly by a teacher. Oh, and Mama walked her back to school and told the teacher her peace of mind. I mean, you don't discipline her, yes, if she's gone wrong. But to go beyond that and have canes on her, injure the child, I mean, that's not acceptable.
So how big was your family? Are you siblings that you had?
I come from a very big family. I know if Prophet DJ is watching, he will laugh. That's the husband of one of my sisters.
Okay.
They are about 45.
Does he say you
yes. Well, we started off with 14, and I think we are left with, is it 9 or 10?
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have like small reunions and talk to each other? Or?
Oh, we talk to each other a lot, commune a lot. And whenever, it was not always just siblings in the house. We have, those days.
Yes.
People from my father's side, from my mother's side, they all came to live with them, for training and things. Those days, you didn't care only for your own. You see, so I have quite a number of children from the extended family who grew up with us.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. In
the same home. So, yes. You want to know some of my siblings?
Two.
Prophet. One is Dr. and Mrs. Mokwa Edujemfi.
Okay.
She was part of the very first. They started the medical school. She and her husband, they were mates.
I see.
In the medical school. They started the Ghana Medical School, the very first batch. Yes, the pioneers. The very first batch. And while they were studying together, they ended up getting married in the end. So they are still together. Another sister is Mrs. Cherhesi. You may know her.
Of course.
And Mrs. Blankson, Maud Blankson Mills. The twin of Mrs. Cherhesi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's also. And I have Mrs. Sibiasma, Sekalba.
Oh, you have blue blood.
Pardon?
You have blue blood. I mean, that's there
are a lot of us.
That's a blue blood family.
And people always say, well, we often hear only of the Blaze sisters. What about the boys? We have brothers, but they are not as many as the girls.
Maybe not as vocal.
And
maybe not as vocal as the girls.
Oh, my brother, the engineer, worked with electricity, he passed on. And The oldest, Jamake, he also passed on. Now we are left with, I think, 3 boys. Amma is a lawyer. He went into the army. He's also a lawyer. Then there was Kwame, who has lived in the UK for how many years? I can't even remember. And another brother who is with the GNA, Amma Blay, is with the... I think these are the only 3 boys left, you know. And the girls, we are holding the fort. So.
Very, very strongly. That's what time will allow us, you know. I told you, anytime you're going to talk to a woman who's done something, whatever she says, multiply. And you know what, I'm going to see if I can come back and then we'll talk about education, have a whole good 45 minutes on what to do with education and how we're going to start the revolution. You know, maybe you all have to join hands, but also thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been wonderful. Folks, until I come to you next Friday with a different personality, have a beautiful weekend. Hello and welcome back. As usual, it's a conversation between myself, PM Personality Profile, and His Excellency, the former President, John Agyekum Kufuor. And I wanted to find out from him if he had to invite 6 people for dinner, the ideal guest. What is ideal guest going to be? And this is the lineup he gave us.
Buzia, to me, was a very great man. Leadership, I believe, is the most critical thing anywhere, anytime. When you talk transformation, you must get just one right person in right space, spot to initiate it. So great leaders to me that should feature in my system would include a man like General de Gaulle of France.
General de Gaulle of France?
Because without him, France wouldn't be what it is today. And he initiated the reforms, brought the 5th Republican Constitution that stabilized France on peril of his life. They were shooting at him broad daylight when he dared to say Algeria should be allowed to go to referendum for it to determine its future. The people who had supported him to power thought he had betrayed them. In broad daylight, they were making attempts at his life, but he persisted and stabilized France, and now France enjoys some glory of greatness. So to me, that's worthy to look at person. The other person is Deng Xiaoping of China, the short leader that succeeded Mao Zedong. Without him, China wouldn't be what it is today. It was this guy who came in, and even as he held onto the communist
Ideals?
Political ideals to hold the country together, he allowed liberalization on the economic front. And now China is beating the whole world to competitiveness and wealth and so forth and so on. But I went to Shanghai and went to an expo. And on the wall of the expo, I saw a granite wall with an etching in gold on which Deng Xiaoping was asking China to go to Singapore. And you know Singapore is a tiny island. Let's go to Singapore to see what it has done. So we come back to China to do it even better.
Wow.
But perhaps it's a paraphrase, but that was the idea. So I stood at, what could big China learn from tiny? But then it wasn't difficult to know why. Because Lee Kuan Yew, whom fortunately I have met about 2-3 times, I've had the opportunity to interact with, had worked in a way miracle with a barren island, just a piece of rock that didn't have any natural resources, but just through using smart intellect, conviction, and strong will, it converted Singapore into... You don't talk development around the world without mentioning Singapore. No. Now, I think that was the idea Deng was telling his people to do. And they've done it. And now China is becoming like a center of the world. So that short man I want to call to dinner too. And then, of course, Lee Kuan Yew, who is still alive, I would want him also to ask how really he matured into what he became and how he did it so successfully. These are some of the people.
There's one more.
One more.
There's one more on the.
Of course, good old Mandela. I met him too. He was a man of destiny, and I believe in destiny. I believe in the force, the mysterious force that shape our fortunes. And Mandela, I feel, was preserved by that mysterious force for a purpose. Because without Mandela, who became who he became, without him, perhaps the southern part of Africa would be a different story altogether. That's been a force for stabilization, for vision, and for inspiration. And as I said, I met him.
I wanted to find out if by any chance he would invite Thomas Sankara to dinner. And this was his position on the question.
No.
You won't get Thomas Sankara? No. Okay.
I don't pretend about these matters.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'm into what would improve the quality of life for human beings across the board.
Okay.
People who really go out. Not anybody who tends to be divisive.
Okay.
I don't like people who would use ideology or race or religion to split us.
Okay.
I'd rather have people who would bring it.
Join.
Let me go religious here.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
What you fought for, what you championed for,
Yes.
is this what you envisaged it to be?
Oh yes, I am happy that we have freedom of expression in this country. Remember that time was when in this country there was something we call the culture of silence. That culture of silence was broken by Professor Dubois in the famous J.B. Dankwa Memorial lectures that he gave. And, few others were also contributing towards the breaking of that culture of silence. Now everybody is able to speak. And sometimes when young people are speaking these days and people are saying all sorts of things, especially when I got myself engaged in peace work and people were writing all sorts of things, saying all sorts of things about me, I laughed because I wanted them to speak at that time, but I didn't hear them.
No, at that time, you dare not. At that
I
time,
guess we had a platform. I was a minister of religion, and the church protected me, and I could use the church platform to speak on social justice, in my preachings and all that.
Okay, Rev, the clergy today, there's a lot of controversy in the clergy today.
Yeah.
And it's actually harder now to find a good church to go. I mean, especially if you don't go to the mainstream churches. You're Methodist, so you're okay, Presbyterian, those. But it should have been the other way, where it should be difficult to find a bad church.
Yeah.
But now it's almost difficult to find a good church.
Yeah, I think the whole issue came about as a result of this so-called prosperity gospel that became prominent. In our days when we were evangelists, we were preaching for people to turn from their sins and believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. We believed that Christ Jesus offered salvation, and that was our concern at that time. Unfortunately, I came back to Ghana in 1986, and almost everybody wanted to call himself an evangelist or a pastor because it was, the preaching the gospel had become an enterprise to me. There were those who were in there for genuine reasons. There were those who also went in there because it was an easy way to become popular or to make money. And especially when people started preaching prosperity, when you come to believe in the Lord, you will become rich and those kinds of things. This is how everything degenerated. And you had people who would not even bother to go for training. In our time, we felt, I did a lot of preaching, but I felt that I needed some kind of training. So I would go through training. These days, people go for training 2 weeks, 3 weeks somewhere, and they, reward themselves with some doctorate degrees where I don't know where it comes from. and then they begin to do all sorts of things. Mind you, there are genuine ones amongst them, people who are genuinely seeking to preach the gospel. Others are imitating, other people. They've seen people gone into ministry, they've made it. So they think they can also go in there and make it. So it has become an enterprise, and that creates all sorts of problems. Unfortunately, people do not draw the distinction. Every minister is a minister. So whether you belong to the Orthodox or wherever you are, we are all lumped together.
Tied with the same brush.
Exactly.
See, the Christian Council, I know it's a matter of faith and it's difficult, but can there be some regulation or some checks and balances to
you see, it's not every Christian church that belongs to the Christian Council.
Okay.
The Christian Council, it's limited to the mostly Orthodox churches, like apart from the Roman Catholic Church, and some other churches who have applied to be part of us. To become part of the Christian Council, you must meet certain criteria. Your doctrine, your governance, and so on will be looked into, and a committee. It takes a long time before Christian Council will admit you as a member of the council. And so some of these younger churches find it very difficult. They think the bigger ones are bullying them. Then you also have the Pentecostal Charismatic Council, headed by my good friend and a member of the Peace Council, Dr. Apostle Onyina. They are trying to bring some sanity amongst their members, and it's good. Then you have the charismatic group. But you also have others who don't belong to any group. Those who belong to groups can be, their groups can call them to order. For example, if you're a member of the Christian Council and we find that something is happening which is not in keeping, we'll draw your attention to it. Because we have written, a code of conduct to govern the lives of our people. But those who do not belong to any of these institutions, the Christian Council cannot control them. Yeah. They are living in a free country, freedom of religious expression. So who am I to say that, hey, Christian Council, this is what I'm going to do? I propose once that they should not register any ministry, religious ministry for that matter, that does not belong to any of the existing groups, like the Christian Council, the Pentecost, and the charismatic groups. If they do not belong to them, don't register them. But we don't have a law. I mean, it's a group of people who have come together, they want to do that. And at some point when we were agitating for this, some of our friends were even scared, because they thought it's a way that these people are trying to, put shackles on us and gag us. So everything goes.
It's a free fall.
Free fall.
I mean, if I just a little comment about what happened, I think in South Africa, where the congregation had to go out and eat grass.
Look at all that. I mean, you can't belong to the Christian Council and do that. And I don't think you can belong to the Apostolic and the Charismatic Association, as I know them, and for them to allow you to do that. But you can do that as an independent body who do not belong to any. And a lot of these things that we read about in the papers, you find out from them. They don't belong to any of these groups. They do their own thing.
Is it because society is becoming too vulnerable?
Gullible. There is too much religious gullibility in this country. We don't question the authenticity, the integrity of the people we are dealing with. We're looking for miracles. So somebody can fake miracles and people will simply follow that person. We don't question. And even though the Bible says that question the spirits, we think that it is being religious means accepting everything. So we are too gullible.
Because we are told not to touch the Lord's anointed.
Well, it depends upon who the Lord's anointed is. How do you define the Lord's anointment? You know, who is the Lord's anointed? Is it somebody who gets up and calls himself a clergyman, who is the Lord's anointed? Who gives that person that authority? Before you can become a minister in the Methodist Church, I'm not saying Methodists are, we also have our own problems. Presby have their own problems. Catholics have their own problems. Even the Church of Pentecost and others, they have their own problems. But at least there are some regulations. Before you can become a Methodist minister, you go through certain processes. If you are not even very careful, you will give up. But somebody just attends a meeting somewhere, climbs the mountain at Atria, spends some days there, says that I have been given some gift of grace and descends, and then he comes and he gives himself a name. It won't be too long and the person adds some degrees to it. You don't know where that degree is coming. These days when people are dishing out degree left and right as awards, we are now even moving into professorship. You know, who are you to stop somebody from doing that? You know.
Hello and welcome to PM Personality Profile. My name is Nana Ansakwa IV. And finally, I've been allowed into the house of the ex-president, John Agyekum Kufuor. And I'm here to have the most informal interview he's ever had. I'm going to go in there and try and convince him if I can bring him out here. So we just sit and chat. From the intro, you know I was going to talk to His Excellency, the former President, John Agyekum Kufuor. And what I wanted to know from him, or my first question to him, was if he was busy in the retirement than he was when he was president. And this was what he had to say.
In a sense, I'm busier now because the president, active president, in a way is protected by protocol and security, and it isn't everybody that gets access. Yes, he's busy, and perhaps in terms of having to think around the clock for the nation as a whole. You know, everything stops at the president's desk, so that can make the president very busy. But now, in my retirement, and I thought I was going to have perhaps a freer and lesser burdened period for me, but I find that now, because I'm not hemmed in by protocol, and I'm in a way exposed, and I'm thankful though, because that's what I prayed to God for, that I would be acceptable to people, and so my career in politics would prosper. Now I'm perhaps having to pay even more dues than before I got to office, because all the many friends I made around the country, from all the 10 regions of Ghana, and even from beyond Ghana, they come in on basis of goodwill. And truly, my nature is such I cannot stop them from coming. And I find that my house has become like a town hall. Every day from morning till night, I get visitors. Many of whom just drop in. They don't come by appointments or anything. They just come. And sometimes I feel I strain the sentries, because once I hear they are there, I just tell the sentry, let them in. And they come, as you've witnessed today.
Yes, yes.
It's like a normal day, what you've experienced. And averagely, every day, not less than about 30, 40 people come from all over. But in some days, the number goes quite very high, almost 100.
I mean,
just drop in. And but this is the life I ask God to help me to live. And I'm getting it, and I'm happy.
What was your ideal retirement plan? What did you have in mind for retirement? Is this what you planned for yourself?
Ideal is to keep healthy, strong, and I love politics. Again, it's natural with me. I grew up with it. So I want to be in there, and I want to be able to continue to help my party to go into power. And suppose my party were in power, I would want to be able to contribute to policy formulation, and also occasionally to express an opinion behind the scenes.
Of course.
To
play a godfather role.
Yes, my presidents, my elsewhere colleagues, on how they are managing that would be the ideal. And of course, also to have some free time to move about, to travel within and outside the country. I'm traveling, but I find that it's not so much on my bidding as by the many invitations from around the world for me to play a role, one role or the other. As I speak with you now, the United Nations has appointed me to be one of 3 special envoys on climate change. Wow. Climate change, as you know, is the most topical issue now around the world. And so that is making me travel, sometimes on very short notice. And even before that appointment last year, December or so, again, through the UN system, I had been made the chair of Sanitation and Water for All. It's a partnership, global partnership. Currently, it lists not less than 95 countries around the world, and they invited me to be chair of it. I couldn't say no, because sanitation and water for all. How can anybody who is fit and can contribute towards ensuring people all over the world have access to good sanitation and water? How can that person say no to such an invitation? But immediately following in the tracks of this invitation, was another, which was a call to neglected tropical diseases. It's a global network, again under the auspices of UNICEF. And they said, look, some neglected tropical diseases, and these diseases, in a way, are prevalent in our parts of the world. So come and be special envoy, talk around global leadership so they would support this good cause. So I'm in there. And then there's Interpeace, another UN-spawned organization based in Geneva, where I've been chairman for the past 3-4 years. So I find that as much as I want to do all these works and they are making me travel, I find I do not have enough space on my private timetable, retirement space, to indulge occasionally, say my grandchildren, and I have 12 of them. Wow. 12 of them. And also to indulge in some hobbies. But I'm not complaining, I'm enjoying everything.
The thing the president was really chastised or criticized for was his traveling. You know, his critics said he traveled too much. And I asked him, Mr. President, do you think that you traveled too much? And this is what he said.
They didn't know what they were saying. I love traveling, but I tell you, take it from me, I didn't travel just for the fancy of it. As president, wherever I went for a very serious purpose. And I tell you, the returns were quite heavy and serious for Ghana, positively. So yes, I traveled, but for a purpose. As I said, it wasn't for flimsy traveling. It so happened that because I love traveling, the traveling didn't strain me too much. Rather, it facilitated my working towards targets.
I'm talking to a man who fought for social justice and equity for this country to stand still. And I'm here to question him why. Most Reverend Emmanuel Asante, president of the National Peace Council, has done a lot, especially the 2012 elections, to make sure that this country stands still. And today he has been awarded the Martin Luther King of Award, which is obviously given to people who have distinguished themselves.
I was in Accra, and when I dropped out of school, I went back to Kumasi. And it was there that, I became deeply religious. Actually, I became converted, a Christian. And I got myself involved with the Scripture Union and Town Fellowship. And some of my friends who were evangelists, the people I associated with, were people who had had education. They had even been to secondary school and university. And I had the opportunity also to preach at KNUST secondary schools and all that. I could articulate in English, even at that time. And I went to preach to these people. Some of them would come to me for counseling. And I said, what? If these people are there, and they are studying for these things, I do not see why I couldn't do that. So I psyched myself up and said that, hey, seek opportunity. Wherever the opportunity will come, grab it.
How old would you be by then?
I was in my teens. I would say that I dropped out of school in 1967. That was 17 years at the time. And
do you mature quick enough then? Well, at that time, I would want to play football. I wouldn't be jumping on a bicycle. I wouldn't.
No, I guess the association, the people that I associated with made me mature. The friends that I, associated with, these were educated people, and I wanted to be like them.
So at 17, you were converted?
Yes, yes.
That's a very early age.
Oh, even earlier than that. I became a Christian in 1966, around 16.
Were your parents also, converted Christians?
My mother was very, very, very deeply religious, a Christian, and very prayerful. So I took a lot of inspiration from my mother, not from my father.
Okay.
Of course, when I was growing up, my mother was not married to my father. So I divided my time between my mother and my father. Occasionally I was with my mother, and then also my father was from a different town altogether in Tonso in Ashanti region. So I would go and live with my father, and then occasionally I'll come back to Ejura where my mother was. So I divided my time between the two of them.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And my mother had a deeper influence on my life because when she was praying, she would call me to, kneel beside her, and we would pray together. So I guess I developed my desire for Christianity through my mother.
I see. Did she encourage your education, or she just sat back and said, well...
No, those days I had completed Middle Form 4. And you know that at that time you completed your elementary school, and they say, well, we're school. So for them, the idea, going to secondary school, they call it college. And college was something that was not for everybody. It was intended for those who had the money. And they didn't have money. So an uncle was trying to put me through, but he was a policeman. And those days, how much were they earning? So he tried, and he couldn't make it. So I had to stop.
Wow. At which point did you start the boxing? Because a little bit,
you
tells
want to
me
talk
that
about this boxing thing?
A little bit, he tells me that Reverend here, once upon a time, used to,
No, you see, those days you had the Builders Brigade, who became Workers Brigade, and in my hometown, Ejura, we had one of their boxers. Workers Brigade, they had some amateur boxers amongst them. Osei, who was a very good boxer, came to live in our home. Actually, he rented a room in our house, and he used to do training. And so he would call me, and I'll be part of that training. We went trotting, came back, do shadow boxing, And then I also had another friend who was also a boxer. So I did a lot of punching bags and all
I
that.
can see you still have the...
It was good because at that time, you know, we had bullies in school. And because people knew that I was training to be a boxer, occasionally, you know, I got in the ring with young ones and boxed. And because of that, nobody really bullied me because they knew that, you know, I had something.
give you the peace of mind to study.
Yeah.
Coming from your background, you can't even afford the school fees. How did you afford a ticket to London to start studying?
You see, at some point in 1917, no, I think, why am I talking about 1917? When I was around 17, 18 years of age and I became converted, I became deeply religious and I decided to share faith. So in fact, I took to full-time freelance evangelism. And I was moving from place to place, sharing faith, preaching the gospel.
Wow.
And I became known. A lot of people, you know, supported me.
At that young age?
At that young age, yes. At that young age, I preached in the villages, preached in the universities, some of the halls, preached in secondary schools. I mean, even in services, they would invite me. I would travel far to, you know, New Drobo, to secondary schools in the Bronhafo region. You know, I became famous. You know, I was called Brother Asante at that time.